On this episode of the Maverick Paradox podcast, I'm joined by Kevin Gwynn White, founder of Expo Group and seasoned guide through the shifting venture capital landscape. We unpack why fundraising has flipped from grow at all costs to profitability or bust, how AI is crowding the pitch decks, and what really makes investors lean in at seed and Series A. If you think money only flows to the loudest hype, this conversation will make you rethink the game. Welcome to the Maverick Paradox podcast, the show for business owners, organisational leaders, and the pathologically curious. I'm Judith Germain, a Maverick leadership expert exploring what it really takes to lead in a world that doesn't always make sense. If you're ready to think differently, challenge the status quo, navigate complexity, and drive real impact, you're in the right place.
Business schools across the entire country, there's accounting majors and there's finance majors. And often there's some overlap in those classes, but the concentration of the kind of jobs people get are very different.
And today our guest is Kevin Gwynn White. How are you doing?
Very good. Thanks for having me, Judith.
You're welcome. Kevin, tell me, do you have a favourite dance track?
A favorite what track?
Dance track.
Oh, a dance track. Man, I listen to, my taste shifts a lot. I wouldn't say that I ever have one favorite. I think like right now I've been listening to more metal and rock music, but then I also go into phases where I'm doing, it's all house and techno. So I guess my flavor right now is more on the rock side, and have gone to a couple good rock concerts recently, but hard to pinpoint a favorite.
Cool. I can almost imagine you at the rock concert. Sounds cool. Kevin, tell us a little bit more about you.
Sure. So I grew up in the Northeast in the U.S. I live in New York. I started my company about 8 years ago. Before that, I started as an accountant, which sounds boring, but was interesting to me. I worked at Ernst Young for about a decade. I did half of the time there, I did sort of capital market strategy consulting work for big banks like Morgan Stanley. Second half of my career there, I did transaction services and M&A, helping acquire companies, doing carve-outs, divestitures. I worked on the Dow DuPont merger at EY, which was a big one at the time. I'm dating myself. And then I worked at a venture capital company. During my MBA, believe it or not, I actually was part of a program at Columbia Business School that taught financial literacy and entrepreneurship to different incarcerated citizens. So we taught in Taconic and Rikers Island in New York. And through that program, met a guy who named Christopher Grew, who was the CEO of a company that essentially sold sort of military grade tablets to the prison population so that different prisoners could get education on it. Because if you go to prison, oftentimes, or all times before they sort of wired the prisons 10 years ago, there's no internet. And so it's kind of like being in a time machine, which very difficult to give you any type of life skills to come out and reintegrate into society. But the investor in that particular company, which is called American Prison Data Systems, was a company called Rethink Education, a venture capital firm, who I ended up working for about a year. I was part of graduate fellow programs with them. And my business started while I was working with that VC fund. A lot of the CEOs, including APDS, just needed a lot of help on the accounting finance side, getting over sort of their Series A or Series B hump. There's a huge lack of really good accounting and finance talent in the startup landscape, which made it incredibly difficult to navigate fundraising rounds where there was really serious institutional investors. So started helping. It worked really well. The partners of the fund asked me to do more. And that's sort of how my current firm, Expo Group, started way back in 2018. Started just sort of helping the portcos of that fund. And we've sort of scaled up, and now we're 80 people in New York. We got an office in Calcutta in India. We serve clients all across the United States and some in Europe and Canada as well.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. So you're well placed then to answer my question. What does the VC landscape look like for seed stage and Series A fundraising right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely challenging. The prior to the pandemic, if people can remember that far back in
Mhm.
2019, there was still this absolutely, and then even through obviously the pandemic accelerated, at least in the beginning, there was still a massive software as a service push in the VC landscape, and we were seeing really big valuations, and everyone was focused just on revenue growth, pure revenue growth. And as everyone who has worked in sort of the startup landscape in the U.S. or Europe knows, is that that bubble kind of popped, and there's been this massive shift right over 2020, end of 2021, 2022 onwards, to a sprint to profitability for startup companies, right? So, burn multiples super important. How much revenue are you adding for the cash that you're burning? And everyone doesn't want to invest more to continue to burn money. Everyone's strategy now is what is the fastest possible way that you can get to profitability. And so the what you sort of show investors and explain to investors is different. There's of course themes that are the same in terms of what a good pitch looks like and how you go out to market. But the big difference is you want to show how you can become a self-sustaining business as quickly as possible. Whereas before it was, how do I get as big as possible? The other sort of challenge now, as everyone sort of knows, is that there's just a great PitchBook article that essentially that 41% of all VC dollars this past year have gone to 10 companies, and so AI is at the absolute center of everything that venture investing is focused on right now. It feels like it's good and bad. I've seen this sort of movie before in that a lot of the AI companies that are coming out say that they're AI, but honestly are just put together with toothpicks and duct tape, and there might be some
Mhm.
machine learning components, or they might be using an API that uses Anthropic or ChatGPT, but really isn't a good AI based company. One thing I find interesting is that we keep an extremely close eye on AI capability to do accounting closes. And interestingly, while AI is so good at coding, like if any type of first pass software application now can be almost completely done through AI. For whatever reason, balance sheet reconciliations can be done once, but then they very quickly deteriorate over time. So possibly because of the precision that's required, but it's not, the accounting side isn't quite there yet. I hope that it will be in a couple of years, but it's not there yet. Anyway, that's all to say that the landscape now is very focused on AI machine learning. Every single company has to say that they have some sort of AI component to it. But the real winners are going to be the ones that are actually using AI in very creative use cases that are providing a lot of value, not just every single software company that sort of slaps an AI label on their pitch deck. But that's the landscape. The money's there, certainly there. It is concentrated with a couple key players, leaving everybody else to sort of fight hard for good funding. However, if you can really pitch and show a path to self-sustaining business, there will absolutely be interested parties.
Okay, so thank you for that. So really is that, are you saying then if you're not AI, if you don't have an AI component, it's probably not worth looking for VC funding, maybe look for other types of funding?
I think that that's a little bit of a little extreme. What I would say is that it's challenging if you don't have an AI component and you're burning cash, right? You're not profitable, then
Uh,
you are limited to a selection of venture capital investors, a lot of which are interested in the AI boom. It doesn't mean that there aren't some that are staying out of that and capital is not available to you. It just makes it easier. However, what I would say is if you are sophisticated enough to get to a point in your business where you have traction and you're break even. Let's say that you got $10 million of revenue, $10 million of cost, or even something small now. Let's call it $3 million of revenue, $3 million of cost. If you can break even, it opens you up to a whole different class of investors, which are growth equity investors. We work with a ton of them. I'm actually amazed. There's a lot of private equity companies doing roll up strategies out there that are buying $3 million top line companies as a platform, and then doing M&A to and a combination of organic and inorganic growth to then scale those platforms and acquire different sort of add-ons that they can sort of roll up in that initial company they bought. In the past, it's always been that the type of companies that you would expect to be a platform are usually $5 million of EBITDA or more. But now I'm seeing smaller software companies get that opportunity. But the companies that are getting that opportunity are the ones that have found a way to either break even or at least be profitable. Then all of a sudden you have a totally different class of investors that are going to invest in you, and the money really opens up. Of course, the paradox that when you need the money most, when you're burning it, it's when it's hardest to get. But that doesn't mean it's impossible, right? Like it's just a matter of staying lean and trying to get efficient.
So that makes sense. So how should someone then change their tactics for fundraising in this market that you're now sort of explaining to become more successful?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for me, it's about showing as much traction upfront as possible and doing a lot with a little, right? So if you can brag that you've made it to $2 million of revenue on 3 employees, that's really impressive. If you're trying to scale a company really quickly and you have a sort of a big operating expense load and you got to $3 million, but you're doing it with a team of 20, it's not as impressive anymore. People want to see companies that are able to go far with less. So I think that that's really part of the pitch, is that like if you can show, okay, with just the 2 founders we were able to get significant amount of traction, that's really enticing to VCs. It always has been. I think that there was just more of a forgiving atmosphere in the past, and now it's required to show a lot more traction up front.
What about sort of social? Is this sort of social causes? Is that still a thing that VCs are interested in, or is it now the hard cash?
No, absolutely. I mean, I come from the social impact investing world, and despite sort of the landscape in the U.S. at the moment, that world is still thriving. There's still a ton of investors with that specific mandate. I think what's interesting is that I'm seeing less new social impacts funds arise, but the ones that are existing are continuing to raise money, and there's plenty of them in the U.S. And they still have a mandate. So I think if you have a strong social cause, and the social impact space, I always heard the term, you probably have too, the double bottom line, right? You want to make money, but you also want to effectuate change. If you can find the right investors, and they absolutely still exist, and you have a mission driven company, that is still a very good way to go to market.
Okay, thank you. So compared to, you said that, the marketplace has changed over even the last couple of years. Other than being able to show that you can be profitably quickly, as opposed to growing quickly, is there anything else that investors care about now more than they did before?
Um, I would say the other themes are consistent, and I can talk a little bit about them. So
Mhm.
I used to like guest lecture at Columbia Business School on an entrepreneur class, and I used to have a presentation about what matters at the different stages of fundraising. And if you are thinking about, if you're a newer company, new entrepreneur, and you're doing a seed round, and that can come in the form of convertible notes or safe notes or what have you. But what I'm really talking about is a seed round where you go out to your first institutional investor, right? Like you're moving beyond sort of the angel investors or friends and family round, and you're really thinking about going in, even if it's a small venture capital firm, a true institutional investor. In those initial seed rounds with sophisticated players, whether that be an accelerator or like a micro VC or a traditional VC, the number one thing that folks care about most is the team. So and that makes sense if you think about it, right? The product's unproven. You might not have a ton of traction yet, and so you're really just betting on that the person in front of you is really good and is capable of doing what they say they're going to do. And so the experience really matters. It's if you're a founder and you have a background in consulting, and you're all of a sudden leading a software company, you've really got to make sure that you have a narrative on why you're the best person for the job. And if you feel like there's a gap there, then that's really important to find a co-founder or someone else who's going to work with you who can help prop up the narrative that you're creating of why you are the best person to run the company that you're pitching. I can't sort of emphasize that enough. I think a lot of, I've seen some seed decks from some earlier companies that wanted my advice. And there's no team slide, and that's a huge mistake, right? You want to start with introductions, and the team slide should be like really have a wow factor. You want to be like the best self promoter you can possibly be, and almost kind of show up to the pitch a little full of yourself in terms of like, I'm the best at this, and here's why, right? Like you really want to come off really impressive. So on the seed stage, I'd say that is by far the most important concept. A lot of people who don't have as much experience think that the idea is important. It is, but it's way less important. It's the entrepreneur and the team's ability to execute an idea. I mean, if you had the best AI idea in the world by someone new, or you had a guy who had sold 7 pencil factories and he was starting his 8th, they're going to choose the pencil factory. It's truly about okay, is someone able to execute on this vision and make us money? So that's a big focus in the seed piece. As you get to Series A, things shift, right? As you get to Series A, the financials all of a sudden come into focus. You could go to a seed round if you don't have a lot of revenue yet. If you have under $1 million of revenue, it is important to have an appendix with basic financials in your pitch deck, but it's mostly to show them that you're capable of putting clean financials together. It actually has less to do with what the financials actually are. It's just that, and I remember this working in venture, it's a filtration factor. If you ask for someone for good financial statements and they can't give it to you, then it tells you something about the sophistication of the team. But in the Series A landscape, all of a sudden, the financials make a big difference. Revenue comes into focus a lot. And then I would say it's really about traction and progress as the number one is, have you been able to grow really quickly and develop a lot of revenue? And then the team is still right there as, very close number 2, or at least they're tied. But all of a sudden they want to show, you want to, during a Series A, have good financial projections that actually tell a story about how you're going to grow over time and show the existing revenue they've created so far. That's the point at which having a financial model is a huge differentiator in terms of how you're able to raise. If you have someone who's got a great pitch deck and then you say, show me the financials, you got to remember a lot of these folks that are working in venture capital or growth equity are former investment bankers. They think through, especially on the East Coast, they think through financial models. And if you have a good one and it syncs with the milestones that you're describing in your pitch deck, it's a really good sign. If you have a great, beautiful pitch deck and you ask for financial projections to show, okay, well, show me how you're actually going to get to $10 million, $20 million of revenue. What is your plan? What's your sales motion? Are you doing it through, sales account executives? Is there a marketing funnel that you're using? How are you going to get there? And if you can show in a sophisticated way what your financial plan is, that is a huge indicator of value for investors. But if you don't go in with that information and you just sort of say, oh yeah, trust me, we're going to get to, $30 million in 3 years, and there's absolutely no thought, or you say something like, well, it just, we're simply going to grow 15% a year. And then when they ask how, you just, oh, it's just 15%, right? That's a bad answer, and it's not good for fundraising. So the things that matter, I would say, besides sort of the staying lean concept and how that's flipped, and now if you're early stage and you are incorporating AI into your product in an authentic way and not in a sort of vaporware way, everything else is really the core tenets remain, right? Is the team capable of executing at the seed stage? And do you have good revenue? Is the team still good? Do you have good revenue? Do you have a plan at the Series A stage?
Brilliant, thank you. Before we wrap up, I'm curious, what does it take to be a good CFO at that early stage?
Oh, on the CFO side, yeah. So, it's interesting. There's a lot of times, the CFOs at the early stage we find like Series A comes in one of two forms. Like one, they're using someone outsourced like us because it's economical. Or two, one of the founders has some sort of finance and accounting background and has the capability to do financial modeling. The challenge at the early, honestly, through I'll call it the lower middle market. So, Expo Group works with companies from $1 million in revenue to $200 million of revenue. So it really runs the sort of spectrum. But the challenge all the way up to, call it, $50 million top line company who goes that high is that the skill set that you need to be a good finance leader um, is not easily found in the market. And I'll describe why. So there's that what you really need is to be an excellent accounting and financial operations expert, and then a very good strategic financial modeler and finance projection expert. And the challenge is that going, at least in the United States, going all the way back to college, those two things are taught differently. So at business schools across the entire country, there's accounting majors and there's finance majors. And often there's some overlap in those classes, but the concentration of the kind of jobs people get are very different. So FP&A, if you want someone who's very good at the strategic projections, board reporting, clean KPI packages, that's you can go out and hire someone who used to be in investment banking or maybe worked in venture for a while, wanted to go on the CFO side. And they're going to create a beautiful financial model for you and do really good projections, but they are P&L people. They're not balance sheet people. And so what that means is that they're very focused on EBITDA and sort of how EBITDA grows over time in their financial model. But they don't understand usually how the numbers get to them. And that's an incredibly important skill set at early stage companies because these finance functions are being built from scratch, right? If you walk into a $200 million top line company, not always, but most of the time, there's been a lot of work done to set up a really good ERP and finance function. And you can reasonably expect that the accounting data you get to put into your projections is good. And that's just not the case at all at earlier stage companies. And so people make the mistake of going out and hiring a good FP&A person, but that person all of a sudden doesn't really understand the debits and credits, and they don't really understand what a good accounting workflow looks like. On the flip side, you could go out and hire an accounting person who's got excellent accounting experience and makes a really good controller. They're going to set up nice accounting checklists. They're going to set up really good balance sheet reconciliations. They understand GAAP. They understand the journal entries and reconciling. But then if you ask them to put a financial projection together, they've never generally been in a job position or a class in college that ever taught them how to think that way, typically. And so long way to answer your question is what makes a good CFO. A rare good CFO is generally someone at an earlier stage company is generally someone who has the skill sets to do both. Very hard to find. We find that the best CFOs we see are generally people who were VP finances at a startup in the past because they were forced into a situation and then generally had some sort of accounting background to understand the debits and credits, because those folks would be forced into a situation where they would have to learn both skill sets. But by and large, usually a team of two is required because you're not going to find that skill set in both people, which is also why outsource firms like Expo Group and other competitors of ours have gained such popularity in the early stages, call it sub $40 million of $50 million of revenue, because you can create teams that have both of those skill sets for the price of one resource versus going out and having to hire a team. But that is what makes a good CFO, the one who can actually structure a good accounting close process, get the close down to, a reasonable timeline, have good controls in place, but then is also able to put financial projections together, do a budget to actual, put board reporting together, understand good KPIs. It's a very hard thing to find in one package.
Brilliant. Thank you. I think you've explained really well the sort of differences that VCs are looking for now compared to like a couple of years ago, and the key things to think about when you're pitching. Is there anything else you want to mention before we close for today?
No, I guess what I'll end with is that, don't be discouraged. So the fundraising environment is difficult, but it's still very robust. I mean, we're still living in a time when private equity and venture capital is the largest it's ever been in the United States. And there is a thriving ecosystem of investors that will happily invest in the right company. And so it's just a matter of being persistent and having grit. But it's not an impossible landscape by any means. It's just being strategic about it and making sure that you're putting your best foot forward when you're going to market for fundraising.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show, Kevin.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. And thank you out there for tuning in to the Maverick Paradox podcast. I'm your host, Judith Germain, and I hope you've enjoyed today's conversation. You can't lead what you don't influence. The Influence Blueprint reveals how your leadership is really landing and what's silently undermining your impact. Whether you're a leader ready to level up or an HR director tired of investing in development that doesn't stick, this is where influence gets real. Find out more at maverickparadox.co.uk/influence-blueprint.